I want to do all of the claps. I want you to have the clap, and I want it to be the clap that you want.
Thank you. Let's do another one real quick.
Some of you may become somewhat uncomfortable as parts of this film unfold, but I think if you listen carefully,
Nature has intended that this human will be a
a healthy, happy sex life is a most wonderful and exciting. We've all experienced curiosity about ourselves and the opposite sex. Who hasn't?
Hello, strangers. I'm Megan.
I'm Marcella.
And I'm Colin.
And
Welcome to Remedial Sex Ed
Ed.
Season 2. Boo, 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 boo.
So we last spoke over Halloween, and then we ghosted.
Yeah,
for a
bye.
We did ghost you. I mean, we always planned on leaving. We just didn't tell anyone who actually listens to the podcast.
We Irish exited our own podcast.
I'm into that. That's who I am as a person.
Me too.
But we are back. We are better than ever. Season 2.
Stronger.
Stronger,
Sexier.
faster,
Yeah.
wiser. I have an eye patch now and a scar that goes over the eye where the eye was.
Yeah,
So I think we're all leveled up.
yeah, for sure. I have Super
Yeah.
Saiyan hair.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just up. It only goes vertical.
So just to clarify, we have decided as a group to keep our season from Valentine's Day, Happy Valentine's Day, to Halloween.
Boom. Look, it's a plan.
A real plan.
You've been given
And
notice.
skip all that Christmas and New Year's nonsense because it's just a hard time for everyone. Okay, we are Remedial Sex Ed. We are a sex education podcast?
Why is that
Something like that.
That's in our
The three of us grew up in a very conservative state, one of the several states in America that teach abstinent-only sex ed classes.
Which is bullshit.
And we all three feel as though there was serious gaps in our education growing up. And so we've taken upon it ourselves as adults to both share things that we've learned up until this point and things that we're learning now.
I don't know if I want to do it to us all. We're all in our late 20s, still learning things. I know, I'm sorry. I don't know if I wanted to murder everyone.
You did. You
all in
killed me.
all in our late 20s, still learning a lot about sex. So we are taking you on this journey
Our whole
with
goal
us.
is we bring a bunch of different perspectives. You know, all
Yeah.
three of us come from different backgrounds with sex, religion, relationship, and our life goals. And I think we're really excited to learn from each other as much as we are learning from other people that we bring onto the show.
Exactly. So welcome.
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 Today, we are talking about the 5 love languages, specifically the 5 love languages book by Gary Chapman. This is it's not the first edition. It's not the first printing, but it is the first edition. And there are 10 to a dozen books in this series.
And this book specifically is catered to help those who feel as though their marriage is failing or that they don't feel as though they're either in love with their partner anymore. And we'll go into kind of my takes on that language within the book later. But what I think is more interesting is that love does not purely exist between marital couples. It does not purely exist between romantic couples. Love exists between family members. Love exists between your friends. I think actually the three of us are really blessed to have a very strong friend group, which has a lot of love to give.
A cult.
Oh, yeah.
A cult.
Too much
It's a cult.
sometimes.
A loving cult, but a cult.
A lo-
No, I think that's really important. I definitely want to say this book, should you choose to read it, is definitely aimed for Christian heterosexual marriages. But the things that are taught within the book can definitely be applied to all relationships. And I do think that there is value in that for sure.
I don't know, the idea of the 5 love languages has sort of seeped into the zeitgeist to the point where people don't realize it's from a book. It's from one book. And they think that it's just a thing, which is kind of I think you should definitely know the context, and the context of this book is somewhat dubious, as we'll get into later, but
Well, I mean, you hit it on the head with saying that it seeped into the zeitgeist because when I originally brought up the 5 love languages, I didn't know about this book. I knew what
that's
the
right.
5 love languages were. I did not know this this book at all.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I worked at Barnes and
And
Noble, so I've seen this a lot.
And it's been a bestseller for like 20 years.
Literally since it started.
So these theories can be applied with how you speak to your partner or partners, how you speak to your friends, how you speak to your family members, really any way that you choose to show love in any context or capacity. The 5 love languages are words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. Starting with words of affirmation, really words of affirmation are just compliments and reassuring the person that they're doing great or there's something that you like about them. It's purely compliments.
It's like verbally letting someone know that they value what you do.
But also just like saying, I love you, like that.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a compliment. It's just like making people aware of your love through words. Like they're just verbal communicators, which is something I struggle with. Why am I on a podcast?
Learning.
I mean, I absolutely thrive and survive on words of affirmation because working as a designer, like so much of my job is putting forth my personal opinion and my personal value of what I think is good and like needing reassurance that what I'm continuing to do is still good.
That design you put together was really stellar. You should make sure that goes on your resume, Megan.
Thank you, Colin.
Yeah, words of affirmation definitely wasn't one for me that like seemed heavy or important. Like it's nice. I like compliments. That's cool. But it wasn't what like sustained me at all. It's something that I know I need to work on though. It's definitely a love language that I want to improve on. And I think that's what was really cool about the book was, we'll get into that later, but not only what love language do you receive, but how you can give it to others and how you can learn other love languages. And it gave, I liked the instructions within this chapter on like how to be better at giving love with words.
Next love language is acts of service. So this is when you love someone because they will take out the trash or do dishes or cook dinner or things that happen with, it means even more if you don't have to ask them to do it. Like someone just naturally does a thing for you. I mean, this is one that I found myself relying more and more on. Like I didn't depend on acts of services as a youth, but as my day job has become more and more demanding and I find myself more stretched for time, like I actually really appreciate acts of services.
I definitely noticed that like a lot of my partners, the love language that they speak is acts of service. So that made me question, like, is that something that, like, is this my love language? Because I keep choosing partners that's definitely how they express love. And it feels really lovely. I still don't think this was mine. But it was, I remember like coming home and having from a vacation and having my ex-boyfriend, like we were together at the time, otherwise that's creepy, but he went into my apartment and he cleaned my room and he turned on some candles for my arrival and like that kind of stuff. It really just does make a difference. And it's a really cool way of showing people that you care about them.
The next one is receiving gifts. Now, I struggle. So at first, when I just hear receiving gifts, I felt as though that was the one I identified with the least because I was thinking like expensive gifts when actually that's not the case. Like receiving gifts can just be the surprise of flowers, like the gift of oneself, like when someone just shows up to sit with you and like nothing else happens. Little gifts like surprises from the grocery store. The most adorable thing I've heard in recent times is actually from Colin's parents. Whenever his dad there will occasionally be times when his dad does the grocery shopping and he'll pick up a box of his mom's favorite candy and just hide it somewhere in the pantry and not tell her that he got it for her, and she'll just discover it one day looking for cereal or like looking in the fridge or something. And I think that's amazing.
That is
really cute.
So damn cute. Oh, I love Colin's parents so much.
They're good. They're
so
good. They're good people. They don't listen to this podcast, but they're good people.
Yeah, I mean, neither do mine. I'm really happy mine don't.
Yeah, that's fine.
Colin thinks I like receiving gifts more than I realize.
You like a gift. You like a surprise. And I don't know, a surprise sort of straddles I think like gifts and acts of service, there's a lot of overlap there, don't you?
I
And
also
I think
think
Megan likes both.
Yeah, I also think gifts and quality time had a lot of
Yeah.
crossover too, which was really interesting because I agree, Megan. I think that I counted this as like my least interesting one. But it was, as soon as I started reading this chapter, I realized that like one of the most monumental, like, relationship moments was with an ex-girlfriend. We had just broken up. It was a really hard time, and we were forced to work on a play together right after the breakup. And she gave each one of the actors, she was our movement director, she gave each one of the actors a flower. And it was like dyed blue because we were in a play where we were in water for the entire show. And it was like a really cool sentiment. And she did this for everyone, but she remembered that I have this stupid obsession with blue roses. And she gave me my first blue rose. And it's like, I immediately fell into tears. So I think like as much judgment as I had when I started reading the chapter, I was like, wait, no, like this did mean a lot to me because it was so specific and tailored for me. And that's what the importance of gifts is, not monetary wealth, but like taking the time to know someone to that detail.
Quality time is the next one. Colin, do you want to talk about quality time?
Yeah, I think quality time is the love language I like to receive, and it is just this one. I think is exactly what it sounds like time when it's just the two of you, and you're not you're not like on your phones. You don't, you're not watching TV. You're just hanging out and talking to each other for a little bit.
Colin has said on frequent occasions that some of his favorite memories of the two of us is when we're in the car driving somewhere.
Yeah. Or when we've done a lot of road trips together, and just being in the car, being able to talk for a couple hours is really cool.
Yeah, this is the one that I think I'm accepting is mine because I thought it was going to be our next one. But yeah, no, it turns out like this means more to me whenever I'm feeling down, whenever anything happens, as much as I love cuddling and all of that kind of stuff, which I thought was going to be it for me. I just want to be around my friends. I want to be around the people that I love and just like hang out, and it doesn't need to be anything major. I just want to be with my people. Yeah.
So what's the next one, Marcella?
So surprise, the last one is physical touch. It's like all about, cuddling and the nice ways that we touch people, not the ways that, listener, you're missing, which is Colin and Megan just plopping their hands onto their faces and bodies in the least sexual way I've seen people touch people.
This is to touch.
To touch.
Yeah. This also includes sex, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also
the
just
ultimate physical touch. So I do think that like physical touch is still a really important love language. Like, I think for a lot of other people, it's less so. Like I have a really good friend who cannot cuddle. Like it is not something that she does comfortably. Mm-hmm. And the reason I know this is because I shared a bed with her back in college, and I latched onto her like a face hugger. Because that's something I do in my sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
She had to keep pushing me off of her.
Yeah, no, I had a partner who like legitimately physical touch does nothing to their love tank, to their emotional fuel. It is so not in their realm. They really struggle to sleep in the same bed as somebody. Like it just doesn't mean for them what it meant for me. And that was like super interesting for us to like dissect into and to deal with. But yeah, like physical touch totally, I think it's monumentally important for me. It turned out to not be my main love language, which I was super surprised by. I was very confused as I kept reading the book. Every single chapter, I was like, ooh, but this means something to me. Ooh, but am I this? And then as soon as I got to physical touch and they went into, the sexism of a lot of husbands think that.
Oh my God.
We've just been talking about what we like about this book so far, but there's a lot of.
I know. I'll get into it.
There's a lot of. later.
I know exactly. I have it bookmarked, the exact phrase you're about to say.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so when they went into like thinking replacing sex as the love tank, and how those are two different needs, or can be two different needs. I realized that like, yeah, that is a different thing for me. Like I really want to always be touching ABT. I learned a thing today. But that's not the number one way to make me feel loved or appreciated, which was really cool. I feel like I honestly learned something from this book.
I mean, I am super confused after reading this. Like, I don't know if I have a primary love language. Like, every single one of them I was able to, like, think about. And I questioned Colin about this for the longest time, about what he thought mine was. Like, I think both of us assumed, like, as soon as I was reading this, once we got to quality time, I'm like, yeah, that's Colin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we've been trying to figure out what my primary is, because I think for a lot of people, being able to relate with all 5 of these is pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
Others will be different. Like, as you said, there are people who get nothing from physical touch. I'm sure there's people who get nothing from quality time. Sorry, go for it.
Just to interject, we've mentioned a couple terms that the audience might not understand.
Yeah.
So,
love
like,
tanks.
yes, love tank, primary and secondary love languages. So, to recap, like, your primary love languages is which one of the 5 is the most meaningful to you,
To
and you'll
receive.
usually have to receive, and you usually have a secondary love language or tertiary, or I don't know, any. Any ancillary. Where am I going with this?
I don't know. You're being real smart though.
you may have other love languages that are meaningful to you.
I love you for your vocabulary. Sorry.
Gets worse.
Words
every
of
day.
affirmation. No, that was that wasn't
Oh,
sarcasm.
thank you.
And something that the author talks about, which is actually true, is the human need to feel loved, and the fact that we each have what he calls an emotional love tank, and how we as human beings start to kind of struggle emotionally when we feel as though our love tank is empty. Now, how that tank is filled is totally different for others. And again, as stated at the beginning of this, like, this book is definitely written for married couples, but I don't think you need to be even in a romantic relationship for your love tank to be filled.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, anytime I go to spend a weekend with my mom is absolutely refreshing, because from a maternal standpoint, she fills my emotional love tank quite a lot.
Yeah.
I just spent 3 full days in the United Kingdom. I spent 20 hours on a plane to go visit my friend for her 30th birthday, something I for sure did not do for my health, but it was absolutely needed, from both me showing them that I love them and also very selfishly receiving the love that I get from them.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's something that I want to just like hand this book to people that I feel like I've been having conflict with, and being like, let's figure this out. Because it's like it goes across all ways. Like, there's a relationship in my family right now that I'm like struggling with. Like, we love each other, we're very, very close, but I can tell that like there's some sort of disconnect in how we're communicating, and I think that this book is super helpful for trying to resolve that. Because I think it's just simply like we're not expressing love to each other in the way that we want it to be received.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and an important part about the love tank is that certain things fill it more effectively than others. Like, this book is full of anecdotes. It's like 85% anecdotes. Like,
Yes.
the book could be...
It could be a
it could be a pamphlet. It could be a brochure. Something we'll get to. But yeah, like, different things mean more to different people, and so their love tank fills up faster with acts of service or quality time or gifts, that sort of thing.
Okay, so let's get into the actual book, and let's start with the author.
Yes. Look. Okay, hold on. One, I just want to say, I know I'm constantly the annoying queer baby being like, this isn't meant for me. No, okay. I accept that this book is not written for, I am not its intended audience, and I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely perfectly fine with that. I actually was really able to very quickly be like, okay, this is written for Christian marriages between in hetero couples. And I was like, okay, that's fine. There are a lot of those marriages out in the world. They should definitely have their own resources. I'm totally fine with that. The thing that hurt me was the sexism in the book.
Absolutely. There are so many things in this book that are gendered that do not have to be. Like, so many of the quotes in this book could actually be very useful if you take out he, she, and replace it with they, them. Like, if you made this book gender neutral, it would be able to be put on so many more truths.
Yeah, it was literally painful for me from the introduction. Within, I think it was the second paragraph of the introduction, it immediately jumped into like a really sexist victim blaming sentence that I was like, why are we doing that? And so I kept having to fight with myself and be like, okay, this is a different perspective than your own, and that means that it is completely valid and I don't need to criticize it at all. But why do we have to talk about men and women like this?
I don't think that it is valid. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of introduce the author because I think it actually explains a lot of the problems in the book.
Yeah.
So the author is Gary Chapman. And Colin was actually able to pull up a bio in order to better explain what I'm about to say. But the whole, I think, basis of some of the reasons why I took a lot of error in this book is he's not actually a licensed therapist or a psychologist.
Well, he may have some kind of licensing. It didn't say in his Wikipedia bio, but his academic background is not in psychology.
So he has a master's in anthropology, and then what was his doctorate in?
Adult education.
So,
and it's from a seminary.
Yeah. So he has a really religious foundation, which has informed a lot of how he's written this book. So I think the way that he's written the book is what he's been exposed to. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of the anecdotes are him helping very Christian couples. Mm-hmm. And I'm not here to religion bash because that I have a ton of respect for someone who has like an identity that means that much to them. Mm-hmm. But it does not suit gender very well. And also, it doesn't have a healthy view on divorce. Mm-hmm. And I'll get to my opinions on how he tackles divorce later because I have it very structured. But I think one of the easiest ways to show his issues with gender roles is from the chapter on physical touch, where the quote is, he will express his desires, but his desires will be different from hers. He wants sex, but she is too tired. I'm going to go ahead and make it a fact that energy levels have nothing to do with, like, sex. Or when I say sex, I mean gender. Like, the genitals that you were born with do not dictate how much energy you have in a day.
Mm-hmm. Or your desire, your level of sexual desire.
Yeah. Like, the amount of times that, like, because it happens, you know, when you have work or it's just been one of those days that you come home in your marriage.
You just feel gross.
Yeah. And you're like, one of the partners wants sex and the other is too tired. It's happened to both Colin and I.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Absolutely.
not a gender specific problem.
It would be like so much easier. I guess the issue is that it just pulled me out of trusting any of the knowledge anytime it was so sexually based. So the sentence that I think really encapsulated it was the third sentence of the acknowledgments at the very beginning of this book. And it was, if he was thanking his wife. And he says, if all wives loved as she does, fewer men would be looking over the fence. And
Yeesh.
Yeah.
you know what? Like, go die in a hole. I have such strong feelings about like victim blaming. Okay, so in this case, victim blaming women for their men stepping out on them and saying that they didn't love them enough. Sure, there is absolutely ownership in taking like if something's not working in a marriage, both people need to take ownership. I completely agree with that. But B, like, go die in a hole. Like, why are you saying it in one direction? Like, I am hopeful that you weren't a horrible person and she didn't want to go step out on you. Like, this is so gendered and terrible, and I hate everything about it.
I
Yeah.
mean, that
And-
happened to someone, I'm not going to say which member of my family, but I've had a very accounted for, like, there's actually been two branches of my family where one, the husband cheated, and the other, the wife cheated.
Yeah.
Like, again, like, cheating is also not gender specific.
Nope. I hate that sentence so much, having somebody very close to me having been cheated on and like having them like really taken the onus on themselves to try and work on it and then having them be cheated on again. Like,
Yeah.
it's no, like, screw you. It has nothing to do with gender.
And also, like, it doesn't have anything to do with like effort as well. Like, so with the two cheating examples that I have, one of them, one partner was trying and trying and trying for years, but the other partner, it just didn't work out. Like, I don't know the full story there, but the other partner cheated, and you certainly cannot claim that the one who was trying, like,
Wasn't
that's
doing
the
enough.
reason why
Yeah,
the other
no.
cheated.
No. So there were just like many ways that the examples were very traditional gender norms, and that was really hard for me to just ingest and still respect the book. And I'm actively trying to accept that there are a lot of couples that live within these gender norms and that this is really effective for them. But it was, from my experience, it was just very irritating, and it made me respect the author less.
Right. I'd like to reiterate that he says that he's a counselor, but that's kind of only half the story. He's a pastor, and
Yeah.
so he's a Baptist pastor, and so all of his counseling experience is from marriage counseling within a church. So you kind of have to take everything he says, especially about marriage and divorce, kind of with a grain of salt. And a lot of the anecdotes he brings up as examples are really damaging.
Yeah.
Dangerous even as
Okay.
advice.
So, I mean, I'm sure between the three of us come up with 1,000,001 ways that he does not express gender well.
Yes.
You're just going to have to accept that that's
Open the
not
book,
a good
pick a
point of this
page,
book.
you'll find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, pick
So,
any page.
I'm going to skip all of the gendered quotes that I highlighted because
Yeah.
we'll be here for 5,000 years
Yes.
and go straight into what Colin just said, that some of the examples that he has is actually quite dangerous. So I want to start with a statement that I like the way that the 5 love languages are described, and it did actually open my mind and give me ways to talk with my own husband about, like, hey, like, am I doing this right? Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
so when you look at it at the pamphlet level, it is helpful.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's go ahead
Like,
and
you could reduce this book to one sheet, I think, 5 paragraphs. And that's really all you need.
I'm going to go ahead and skip to a chapter that made me feel a lot of feelings called Loving the Unlovely.
Yeah.
So essentially, this entire chapter is about a woman that he counseled into staying with her husband. Now, this husband, on multiple occasions, told his wife that he hated her. From all accounts of what the wife was telling the counselor, it sounded like she was actually kind of scared of him. And ultimately, there were so many examples of this marriage not being healthy. Now, the author has conveniently chosen to only include anecdotes of success stories of couples that he was magically able to save with just changing the love language. And I genuinely hope that's what happened to this woman. I genuinely want, if like she was able to pick a different love language and the marriage worked and he's been better and she lives happily in a fear-free environment, that brings me so much joy. But I just want to say divorce is a good option sometimes.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm a huge proponent of divorce. I think that a lot of people get married for the wrong reasons, or get married too quickly, or like the way that he talked about I love that he did bring up the fact that you can only be in the in love experience for a maximum of 2 years. Like, it's just endorphins in your brain when you're first falling in love that don't last forever. That's like scientifically proven. I've seen it. I've studied it in like a college course before. And so you see a lot of people that while they're in this like in love world, they decide to get married without ever working on like how to actually be sustainable partners for each other. And so, yeah, I think like they're like my parents are divorced, and I think it was exactly the right answer for them. And I was really thrilled when they actually decided to divorce because they just weren't right for each other, and it was a toxic relationship. And they're both better outside of it.
oh, absolutely. Like, people talk about how traumatic divorce is for kids. And yeah, it sucks. Like, I'm not going to say that I was happy throughout the entire divorce phase. But you know what is more frightening to me than the idea of my parents being divorced? It's them getting back together.
Yeah, I want people to know that like it's important. Like, marriage is definitely work. Partnership is work. And it's really important and valuable to like use these resources to try and improve and create a really healthy marriage. But you also like need to know when something is too far for you. It's all about boundaries. You have to know what your boundaries are. You have to be with somebody who respects those boundaries. And if they're not respecting those boundaries, it is an acceptable and respectable option to get a divorce.
Right. And that's not something that Gary Chapman would tell you, which is why I think a lot of the anecdotal evidence that he includes as, supporting evidence for his 5 love languages theory is dangerous, because there are multiple examples in this book of when he counseled people to stay together when they really should have gotten divorced. And, we only have his word to take that it worked. We only have his anecdotal evidence. There's no way to, to verify that any of this is true. There's no study, saying that the 5 love languages program is something that always works for everyone, which is why my hot take is that you should not read this book. Like, if you're thinking about reading it, email us at Remedial Sex Ed and I will send you the bullet points. Like, that's really all you need. Like, don't buy the book. If the 5 love languages thing is interesting and anyone can apply it to any relationship, so learn what those are and learn how to apply each one, but that's all you need. Like I said, like 90% of this book is just fluff, anecdotal evidence that every single one is a success story. It's just hard to believe.
To be fair, and before we get sued, all of the information is also online. Like, he has a really thorough website, and everybody has written about what the 5 love languages are. And like, there's a lot of, there are resources for you to get the good information out of this book. And I do think that there is a lot of good information in this book. But yeah, I didn't need the stories. I didn't need the sexism. And
and they're all the same story.
All of them.
Every anecdote there, because he provides like 2 or 3 stories per love language that supports his theory, and they're all the same story. He's like, they came to me, they didn't understand each other, they were going through a really hard time, and I said,
try this,
listen to each other and try this, and hey, it worked. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool story.
Yeah.
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 I want to talk about something where you were talking about how someone can't be in love for longer than 2 years. And I found this really interesting because I think that it's true. Like, the endorphins and like of meeting someone for the first time do wear off. And I think the way that I have always defined love has been different than others, including this book. Because And I think it's mostly as a defense mechanism, like a personal Megan defense mechanism. I try to like separate what the endorphin feelings towards someone is away from like actually loving someone, which I found it really interesting to keep reading the phrase like you can't be in love with someone for longer than 2 years. Because for me, I've never kind of like allowed myself to admit that I'm in love until after I know that person's flaws.
I believe that you can be in love for the entirety of your lives with somebody, but it's a different sensation than the initial 2-year period of falling in love. And I put that in parentheses because it's the best way to explain this was I took a course on this. Essentially, the way to continue having that in love sensation with somebody after that initial endorphin has ended is by growing the attachment center of your brain to associate the other person with joy and happiness. So you can continue to have those feelings. And that's like a lot of what you see. This is why you get, what's it called when a widower dies within a year?
Oh, yeah. I know
Well,
what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know the
Is there a name
technical
for
term,
it?
but-
There's a name for that because basically it's that those are relationships where the attachment center of the brain, well, not always, obviously, this is a generalization, but the attachment center of the brain has connected that other person with all of your joy and all of your happiness and all of your this. And when you remove them from you, then you kind of remove your like will and your energy to live. Like that was happy. This is this. So that's why you get a lot of those relationships where like that was their entire attachment center. Like that was everything that they were connected to in life. And so their will to live, quote unquote, has kind of gone away. And that's why you see it so often where people will die within a year of their spouse after having 50-year-long marriages.
I really hope that doesn't happen. Like if I die, I've decided that Sally inherits Colin.
Oh,
I don't want to be a part of this.
But I don't want him to die after I have my final stress heart attack.
Oh, Meg.
Let's just focus on that stress heart attack being like really, really far away from now.
But
Also, how does Sully feel about this?
Yeah, have you
she's
talked
on
to her?
board. I
Okay.
told her.
Okay.
She's like, "Oh, we'd have fun."
Great.
As long as
Yeah,
everyone except for Colin has given their consent, then yeah, sure, fine.
No, I like Sally. I do think we'd get along. Like
But
number
yeah,
one
so Megan, it's not that I disagree with you. I think you're right. Like what you're calling love is actually growing to a point of that attachment and having something more than just those feelings.
Yeah. Because like I get what he was saying with like, because there is kind of an endorphin phase that like dies off.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's always actually been quicker than 2 years.
Yeah,
Like,
it's the max it can be is 2 years, but it does
Yeah.
go shorter.
It's like infatuation versus attachment.
Yes,
Yeah.
Connection.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard for me to sympathize with people who are so adamant that like divorce is the absolute worst thing that could ever happen. And I think it's hard for me to sympathize, A, because that's not how I was raised, and B, when my parents did get divorced, I saw a lot of women like ostracize my mom for being a divorced woman.
That is
In-
so the culture of where we grew up.
Yeah. And like in like 2002,
Yeah.
like they treated her like I think many women who got divorced in the 60s would have been treated.
Yeah. No, it's
So-
really sad. And I hope that fewer and fewer people are feeling that impact.
So it's hard for me to like sympathize with that culture, but if you are a member of that culture where like you are going to try anything and everything to like save your marriage, I could see how this book would speak to you.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, the anecdotes he tells don't come from nowhere. I think in these super Christian marriages, that's the problem they run into. You get married young or you get married early in your relationship and you don't really know how the other person works. And then you have some kids and life goes on. And 10 years down the road, you really hate you are really resenting your spouse. And you are not speaking the same, you're not on the same wavelength in terms of how you love each other. And, this could be a real lifesaver
Yeah.
for those relationships where divorce is just not an option.
Another critical thing that really bothered me was in the physical touch section. I was like perfectly willing to be like, this is for heterosexual Christian marriages. I am not judging their lifestyle. Sure, that's great. That's fine. And then he judged my lifestyle, and I was like, you're dead to me.
Yeah.
Because in the physical touch section, he was like, yeah, no, people keep trying these open marriage things and they all fail because this is this and meh, 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 and you can only love somebody if you only give them your one special flower. He didn't say that. It was just like reminiscent of some BS I heard growing up. But yeah, no, I think that's a complete lie. I'm really close to a relationship where they've been together for 5 years and they're in an open relationship, and seeing the way that they love each other and keep each other's love tanks full and are also exploring other relationships and being good partners in those relationships just makes me think that they're better at Gary Chapman's game than Gary Chapman. So like, I'm sorry that you're only capable of doing that with one person, but some of us have evolved.
Reading this just made me think back to reading The Ethical Slut and how much better it is at even just a general relationship book. If you are looking to really work on a relationship and really become a better person, then like Ethical Slut has a lot better roadmap.
Or a licensed, actually trained therapist.
Actual therapist.
I very much am in favor of psychiatrists and therapists. They're great people who do a lot of work. Make sure that they have a degree in that
or at least
field.
Some kind of licensure.
Yeah. Like, it's important. You know, mental health, it gets harder and harder with each passing year, in my opinion. Like, we're asking more and more of ourselves when taking less and less like quality time for ourselves. So having someone who can help like de-scramble your brain.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. No.
Someone who can help explain you to you.
Yeah,
is really
sometimes
helpful.
You need that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't understand. Like, you're too close to the situation.
Yeah, I know.
You
I
need
need
a third
that.
party
Like,
person to be like, this is what's actually happening. I don't want to completely discredit the 5 love languages. I actually like them. I do think that for me personally, I don't really have a primary. I think that my love language changes with what I actually need in the time. I think it's interesting that while we were reading this book, you said that as of right now, your primary is quality time. And for me, it's feeling a lot like acts of services. And I think that's a direct result of just the crazy hours I've been working recently. I've actually like needed more. And so acts of services have meant more to me. And Colin's been missing me a crazy ton. So quality time is becoming more important.
Makes sense.
So maybe there isn't like a primary that's yours until you die. Maybe it evolves.
Yeah, it could.
Preach.
It could be with like the phases of your life, right? That makes perfect sense to me. I also guys, I think out of the 3 of us, I have the fewest problems with this book. Who thought that was going to happen? # not me, not any of our listeners, I'm sure. No, I think I learned a lot. And I think it's because I definitely communicate love in gifts is a huge way that I communicate love, even though I don't receive it that way at all. And it taught me like how to do the other love languages. I really liked, as much as I hated the examples, I liked how he told them to work on it. I like he gave practical list structures and said, list these things out. This is what you would like your partner to do for you. This is how you think you can help your partner. Like, he gave practical advice in order to move forward and try something. And I respect that a lot. And I think that's something that I'm going to start applying in my life in trying to like better communicate with people who have very different communication methods than I do.
And to this author's credit, Megan and I got in the car yesterday on the way to dinner and made a list of 5 things that we can do for each other this month. I think it's important to just say, to ask people what would make them happy and what would make them feel loved, and then do those things.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a commentary on like where my love tank is, but like I legitimately started to tear up twice during this book.
Oh, babe.
Like
Really?
it was like, no, like in a good way. Like I was so happy for like the way that this situation, like, or how they were able to like grow or like learn something about their partners. It like made me really happy, the concept of like growing and taking care of your partner and like evolving to better suit them. It just really made me happy. I just really loved it.
Yeah. I think both of us, as we were reading this book, it was kind of affirming to know that we have a solid marriage.
Yeah, it was affirming in a lot of ways to be like,
Yeah.
things could be
Things could be
a
so much
lot
worse.
worse.
But like, there were so many ways that we were reading this, and we're like, yeah, well, duh. Like,
Yeah.
and I think it's important to remember that not everyone realizes that. And in some ways, you actually benefited from this because I was reading it before you started, and I started being more gooey at you. So you can say I don't recommend this book, but it has benefited you.
It has. And it's kind of a struggle for me. I don't recommend, like I said, I don't recommend reading it cover to cover, but I definitely recommend the idea of love languages and communicating with your partner and finding ways to love each other that are the most meaningful to the other person.
Can I
it's a-
challenge something that you guys just said though?
What?
What?
The idea that you said, well, duh, but isn't that because this book and its concept has been in our social norms and has been talked about and is part of our schema and experience? So like maybe it's well duh because we've received the knowledge of this book just by
Maybe.
existing in our society versus
I-
just reading it today or this week.
Very possible.
I mean, definitely lots of people at church talked about it. So like
All the time.
I definitely have known,
Go to your church.
I know, but I have known about the 5 love languages for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know about them directly. I couldn't quote them off to you.
hmm The thing I like most about the book is that it doesn't privilege one love language over the other. Like giving gifts is just as meaningful to some people as quality time. Whereas I think maybe like based on influences from media or just personal bias, we might tend to think that like, you have to show your love by expressing it in words, or you can only show it by spending quality time. You know, that's what really matters. But different people like different things.
Yeah.
No.
I do want to raise that I think it's like total BS, the idea that like now everything is the 5 languages of forgiveness and the 5 languages of this. And I'm like, did you work really hard to get to 5 or cut out a bunch of things so that it could be 5? Like, I have a strong feeling that like 5 isn't a magic number in communication strategies. So I just wanted to like shoot that one like right out and be like, no,
He's
that's not
definitely
cool.
capitalized on the success of this book
Yeah,
and
I
turned
think
it into a chicken soup for the X.
For the dick.
I was just going to say, like, with the way that you reference Chicken Soup for the Soul, like, that is exactly what he has done with this book.
Yeah.
And, like, you know what? More power to him. We live in a capitalist society. Colin, don't.
I won't grudge anyone a living.
Don't.
And he's not a total huckster. Like,
No,
I mean, he's
but I
kind of
think
a huckster.
There's a lot of validity in what he had to say. I grew from it. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Period. Yeah.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
I think
I think we've summarized it.
the hardest part for me is just that good ideas coming from like a bad source. That's what I can't get over.
Yeah.
But
There were a lot of my mind, like in order to read this book, it would take out the genders and replace it with they. I did that while reading it, and it made it a lot easier.
find and replace
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the brain.
I actively couldn't do that. I actively just got
You had to more
angry and then was like,
compartmentalize. Just be like,
let it
this
go.
isn't for me.
Yep, I just swapped them out, and it made it so much easier. And yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
want
yeah.
a gender neutral version of this. So I want a non-hetero, non-monogamous, non-Christian version of this. So like to all of the queer babies out there, like if there's another resource that's similar to the 5 love languages, that's more like accepting of the different varieties of love, let us know. Hit us up. Tweet at
Please.
us.
Well, that's how I wanted to finish this, is like take these love languages and apply them to everyone.
Yeah.
Like this is not just a marriage thing.
No.
Like I have a really, really good friend of mine whose love language is definitely gifts. But like in a different way that I like to receive gifts. So my favorite type of gift is either something that like someone's really thought into, or it's like I prefer to have fewer things that will last me a long time. This friend just loves things.
Yeah.
Like an abundance of things. Like every Christmas he comes with this huge bag of like thrift store stuff and like things that he's collected for free from conventions, and like he thinks because it's like a
lot.
huge bag of things that's the best thing ever.
Right.
Yeah. So there are also
I know
different
who
dialects
you're talking
within
about.
the language.
Oh, yeah, we didn't really talk about that. And actually, that's another credit to this author, that he did talk about different dialects of each language and different shades of expressing love within these 5 broad categories.
Yeah.
Yeah, just cool.
And I think there are some friends in your life. There's obviously the friends where when you see them, it's fleeting, or you're only friends for a little blink in your life. And then there's other friends who you have for a long time, and you're going to fight with them in a similar way that you fight with a spouse, because that just kind of, it's human.
Yeah.
Like when someone gets to know you more and more, they know your flaws. You might date someone they don't like, or you might like do something that has made you a complete ass, or like you might live together and things happen.
We're
in
not
that.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna fuck up sometimes.
Yeah.
And if that friend means as much to you as obviously Marcella means to us,
No, what did I
much
do?
or as much as like Caroline means to me, or as much as like Ryan and Sonoma mean to Colin, like you have to, again, find ways to do these, I think, 5 things to them to keep them in your life. So
After this
apply it
episode,
outside of
listeners,
romance.
I'm about to find out the things that I need to work on, because apparently I've offended them greatly.
Just in short, this applies to everyone. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy
Yeah.
We didn't talk about Valentine's Day one bit.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
don't
I'm
have
not
to.
really
That's okay.
into Valentine's Day, so
It's a good starting point. And this is definitely something that you can do with your Valentine.
Speak your love.
Speak good
your
love.
love. So, what are you guys doing for Valentine's Day?
I may or may not be taking Colin to a burlesque Mexican wrestling show.
Whoa,
Nice.
cool.
Yeah.
Is
I didn't know
Colin
about
just
it.
now learning
I'm
about
just
this?
now hearing
Just
about
now
this.
learning
That's
about
amazing.
Surprise!
That's amazing. Thanks,
Called
Meg.
Lucha Vavoom. They're based out of Los Angeles. They have quite a few shows. They're a lot of fun. If you live in the greater LA area, I highly recommend that you check them out.
Cool.
Hashtag spoiler alert. For anybody in the New York City area, reach out. Nope. Actually, we're going to have to cut this out. We're putting this out on Valentine's Day, and the event is Valentine's Day. So never mind.
What's
Aw.
happening on Valentine's Day?
You can do it before Valentine's Day.
The dominatrix that we're having on the podcast in a few weeks is hosting a Valentine's Day BDSM intro course.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice. Oh, cool.
All right.
Cool.
Anything else that we need to announce before we go?
Yeah.
We should do a little call to action.
Oh, I was going to say, we have a new segment that we want to announce.
Yes.
So part of season 2, we want your questions.
We want you. Send us your questions. If you send them in, we'll answer them here on air, or whatever you want to, whatever it's called when it's a podcast, on the pod.
On the pod.
So we want to hear from you. Please message us on Facebook, send us an email, remedialsexed@gmail, lowercase 1 word. Twitter, Instagram.
Find us.
Talk to
add
us. Yeah.
DM us. Send us those dirty questions that nobody would ever answer for you, or the just like weird questions that you want us to ask doctors, or like strange other questions that have to deal with this realm of human interaction at all.
Yeah, so we want to start answering your questions. Tweet at us, follow us on the social medias. We want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm Megan.
I'm Marcella.
And I'm Colin.
Thanks
for listening.
Happy
Bye.
love.
Happy love.
Happy
Bye.
love.
Valentine's Day.
Beep boop.
You will agree that the concepts will contribute to the rearing of a mature person.
An absence of
Oh, yes, you don't have to be thinking about sex